Welcome everyone, I'm Spiro for ActivistPost.com. Thanks for tuning in. Now, we are seeing mandates spreading faster around the world than the virus itself at this point. We're already seeing many examples of COVID-1984 caught on camera. Now, I knew that this level of rhetoric to foment the fear, again, this time to justify the mandates, was coming. I think we all did. I just didn't think it was going to happen this fast. I kind of thought that they would wait till flu season at least, right? I mean, remember flu season? You know, that thing that we didn't have last year for the first time ever? Flu season. It used to be a thing. But here we are. And as we approach flu season, you have to wonder what's coming next. Well, the former CDC director is warning of a variant more dangerous than Delta, if you can imagine that. Despite the fact that the CDC admits PCR tests cannot distinguish the difference between various coronavirus strains, and they plan to do away with PCR altogether by the end of the year. They announced that quietly. When Bill Gates was asked about what we should expect next, he warned of bioterrorism.
What else are we not listening to that we need to take action on now?
Well, the idea of a bioterrorist attack is kind of the nightmare scenario.
Now, I've never been a fearmonger, and I'm not here to sell you anything. But I need to bring something to your attention. Now, this may be nothing. It's at least interesting, but based off of history and what is taking place right now and the direction that things are going in, this may be a big deal. So take it with a grain of salt for what it's worth, and always think for yourself. It was just reported that the U.S. Army conducted a joint 3-day exercise with the New York City Police and Fire Department for a nuclear or biological event in the New York City subway system and on Yankee Stadium on August 4th. This took place last week. All of this as we approach the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. And there was complete radio silence on this. Instead, all eyes were focused on Cuomo and that whole garbage scandal. Now, personally, I fully support training for everybody. I support our first responders and our military. First responders are the ones who show up when you need help the most, when you have no one else to call. And there's a lot of good folks in the military who they are trying to purge and mandate that they roll up their sleeve right now. While I don't support any of the wars abroad that were based on lies, how many veterans do you know that are just good, solid people? My family's full of them. My friends, my colleagues. And they are some of the people who are not going along with COVID-1984, who the government have been calling domestic terrorists for the past decade for supporting the Constitution that they swore to uphold. The point is that the U.S. government and the U.S. military have a history of experimenting on unsuspecting people that did not consent to being experimented on. So when I see stories in the news about how the U.S. military just conducted a nuclear and biological disaster drill on the New York City subway system right before we enter flu season, as the mandates are rolling out, as we're expecting the experimental shots to get full approval, this raises some red flags for me. And it reminds me of false flags that have occurred in the past. This also reminds me of other experiments that were conducted by the U.S. military on the New York City subway system in the past. And I have to call it out when I see it, even if only to remind you that these events have taken place in the past by these same people and remind you what they're capable of. In 1966, the U.S. military intentionally spread what are now considered to be potentially deadly pathogens throughout the New York City subway system and measured how they would spread, exposing people in those subways to these potentially deadly pathogens. This was part of the U.S. Army germ warfare testing program that conducted hundreds of experiments over the course of 20 years. As Business Insider reports, these experiments stand in direct violation of the Nuremberg Code, which stipulates that voluntary informed consent is required for research participants. That is what the Nazis did. You know, the ones who were convicted of crimes against humanity? Yeah, those ones. That's how we got the Nuremberg Code. Now, at the time the military experiments were conducted on the unsuspecting people in the subways, the military stated that the pathogen was harmless, but now it's considered to be dangerous, and people have died from what they spread in the subways. So when I see the U.S. military doing the same exact drills and the same exact locations, which they have on record in the past, intentionally released dangerous pathogens as we enter flu season, as the mandates are rolling out, the digital passports, I have to say something. I have to let people know what is taking place, potentially. There are similar exercises that are scheduled to take place in Philadelphia, in Los Angeles, coming up here in September and October. So this is happening coast to coast that we know of. Now, I'm not saying that biological agents are being intentionally spread by criminal elements that have access to state-run biowarfare programs, but I can't rule it out either. Can you? I'm simply saying this is a critical time right now. Exercises and drills, just like so-called pandemics, provide perfect cover to get away with a lot of things. You can get away with a lot of things and just blame it on the virus. Now, these are the same ones who are running these drills right now across the country that have been busted in the past. Okay, that's my main point right now for releasing deadly pathogens on unsuspecting public. So it's something that people need to be aware of, that we need to look at. And if something happens, if there's some new thing that takes place, this is how they would spread it if they were going to spread something. I'm sorry, I have a problem trusting known criminals and liars, but that's just me. So they have a history. What's the first thing that happens when you get pulled over? They run your history to see if you're a criminal, a known criminal. There's a reason for that. But see, you're not allowed to talk about these things. Just like you're not allowed to point out that Fort Detrick, which is the epicenter of the U.S. biowarfare program in Maryland, was shut down by the CDC due to safety violations just before the outbreak in 2019. You're not allowed to ask for investigations. You're not allowed to ask about the World Military Games in Wuhan, China, that coincided essentially with the outbreak. You're not allowed to ask about Event 201, the pandemic simulation just before the outbreak. You're not allowed to talk about this stuff. You get censored. You get called names, ridiculed. If you ask for an investigation, you're considered a communist working for China. But personally, none of this appears accidental, and I believe that this is a global campaign, part of the Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, the Internet of Bodies, and a transition, a paradigm shift into a new system of control. And they're all on board, in my opinion, based on the evidence that I've seen. Again, this is food for thought as always. Make up your own mind. Think for yourself. Resist COVID-1984. For ActivistPost.com, I'm Spiro with a potential false flag alert. Thanks for watching.